No, Kodo. Now, are you able to hear His Holiness? Everyone, do you hear? Kodo sa.
Oh yeah, da, Rinpoche.
May please Lama Zopa Rinpoche. His Holiness is not able to hear Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Please wait.
Kodo, test.
Please test. His Holiness can't hear Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it seems. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche just gave his initial teaching, introductory talk, and now we are making the mandala offering. By the sound of the great Dharma, drum of Dharma, may you set suffering sentient beings free. Please teach us Dharma and live for inconceivable tens millions of eons, like Bodhisattva. Always crying one followed Chepak without being distracted by all our body, life, and possessions. May we please our holy virtuous friend well and never displease you even for a second. So it seems there is a technical problem that here we are not able to hear Lama Zopa Rinpoche from Nepal. Does Lama Zopa Rinpoche hear His Holiness? Lama Zopa Rinpoche.
Oh.
So today, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, as Lama Rinpoche has requested to teach the text Recognizing My Mother, an experiential song of the view, and I also accepted the request very happily, and so we have decided to have the teaching on it. Does everyone hear His Holiness, or? Okay. So first of all, with regards to the term Song of the View, the view here refers to the view of dependent origination or dependent arising, and as I usually talk about these two principles, the philosophical view of dependent arising and conduct, ethical practice of and not harming others. And so these are related to the world at large, that of the ethical conduct or non-harming or non-violence has to do with world peace. And here the so with regards to the authenticity of the lineage of the teaching, the Buddha first, after enlightenment, said that he has found this or discovered this profound nectar-like teaching or dharma, which is profound, peaceful, and so forth. And even if he were to teach others, nobody will understand him, and therefore he will not give teachings, but remain in the forest in silence. So it seems that this first verse that he uttered after enlightenment seems to have, in a way, captured what he was going to teach later, the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. And so the first turning of the wheel of Dharma is on the Four Noble Truths, in which he taught this is the true suffering, this is the origin of true suffering, and this is the true cessation, this is the true path. So in this way he identified the Four Noble Truths. And then how do we go about with getting rid of the first two and attaining the latter two? And therefore the Buddha said the suffering must be known, the origin must be eliminated, cessation, true cessation must be actualized, and then the path must be cultivated. And therefore, with regard to overcoming suffering, even down to the small creatures like insects do not want any suffering. And therefore, if we do not want suffering, what the Buddha has taught is that we must get rid of its cause, which is the origin of suffering. And so the origin comprise the two, which are the karma and mental afflictions. Is it possible to overcome these two or not? And therefore the Buddha went on with the third statement with regard to the Four Noble Truths. He says the suffering must be overcome, but there's nothing to overcome. Origin, the suffering must be known, but nothing to be known. Origin must be overcome, nothing to be overcome, and so forth. So, in the ultimate sense, the suffering, to overcoming suffering and the understanding suffering and so forth cannot be done. And therefore, the Buddha taught true cessation. By understanding how things have no ultimate or intrinsic existence, you attain that of the cessation. And therefore, in order to attain the cessation, you need to cultivate the path. And therefore, the Buddha said, there is no... So in order to understand the... whether the true cessation can be attained or not, you need to check whether whether the suffering and its origin can be overcome or not, and whether the afflictions, defilements can do have the powerful antidotes to them or not. And therefore, Chandrakirti says, in and so in his Madhyamaka Avatara, the third last verse of the 6th chapter, where he says the
吕了刘王其实都定目功了那有的，提起有目他们这些定目上面教会就，你看，但是这种情况个通了。
And then Nagarjuna say, in the 400 verses of Arya Deva, he says, just as the physical faculty permeates all other faculties, likewise the ignorance permeates all other mental afflictions. And this can be overcome by understanding a dependent origination of things. And therefore, anyone who wish to understand the teaching of the Buddha must be taught the dependent origination first, right, and at the outset. So what we need to understand is whether the defilements and suffering that it causes can be overcome or not. And so since the root of all our karmas and afflictive mental afflictions is that of ignorance, as I quoted the 400 verses, and therefore as Chandakirti, I quoted Chandakirti, what he does, what Master Chandakirti does is that of demonstrating through reason and logic. Because merely resorting to scripture may not give you any conviction, very strong conviction, but through reason one can gain conviction in the truth that these defilements in our minds are only temporary, adventitious, and the root of all these mental afflictions is ignorance or confusion, and which can be overcome through the understanding of selflessness. And therefore, when you understand that, then you can see the possibility of attaining true cessation. And then after that verse that I quoted earlier from the 6th chapter, the third last verse, and then the second last verse from the 6th chapter, and then in the beginning, the Master Chandakirti makes salutation to compassion and combining it with the view of emptiness. And then at the end of the 6th chapter, the Master Chandakirti says that the Bodhisattva, with the two wings of both ultimate view and ultimate wisdom of the ultimate truth and the conventional truth, flies across to the farther shore of the ocean of samsara. And therefore, with these two, the wisdom and methods complementing each other, then you will be able to reach the Buddhahood, where you, at which stage you would have overcome all the defilements in one's mind, from within one's mind stream, both the mental afflictions and the cognitive obscurations. And then in the 6th chapter, there are these four logical absurdities that are set against those who assert that things have some self-characterized existence. So verse number 34 to 36 of the chapter 6 of Madhyamaka sets forth these four logical absurdities, saying that the conventional truth would be able to withstand logical analysis, and that the so things would be destroyed by the Arya beings' direct insight into emptiness, and that things are merely imputed by way of, designated by way of our names and labels. And so this is very similar to quantum physics. And then the third absurdity is that the ultimate existence cannot be rejected or refuted. And that's the Buddha. And the fourth is that the Buddha, having taught that things are devoid of their own self-existence, would not hold true. So the last verses of the 6th chapter of Madhyamaka are very powerful summaries of Madhyamaka. And so I recite the verses from chapter 6, verses 34 down, and then reflect on how things do not have any intrinsic inherent existence. And so here the view refers to the Madhyamaka view, the middle way view. So first, in order to understand this, you need to first develop an understanding based on hearing the teaching, and teaching from a teacher, and then whatever you have heard, you need to reflect on it again and again. And so, Mula Madhyamaka Avatara, the Prasanapada, and the 400 verses of Aryadeva are very important texts for understanding the Madhyamaka view. And so in order to understand the Madhyamaka view well, you need to be also able to distinguish between the Savatantrika and the Prasankhika views. And so having heard the teaching on emptiness, you need to reflect on it. And so when you reflect on the I, yourself, as the Mula Madhyamaka Avatara says, the Tathagata is neither the aggregates nor distinct from the aggregates. The Tathagata is not based on the aggregates nor the aggregates on him. The Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. What else is the Tathagata? And so I use this verse to refer to myself, that I am not the aggregates, I am not distinct from the aggregates. I cannot possess a distinct self from the aggregates. And then the things like body and so forth are seen, usually perceived as the mind. So what else is the Tathagata? What else am I? Who else am I? You come to that question, and therefore when you do this kind of analysis, trying to pinpoint who you are, analyzing yourself within the aggregates or separate from the aggregates and so forth, you will not be able to find anything as being yourself. And therefore, by default, what you come to conclusion is that you are merely designated. Whereas this ignorance, holding on to some an identity of a self, an absolute self, that cannot be found. And so when you analyze this self, which is held by the ignorance, you will not be able to find anything being yourself. And therefore, you come to the conclusion by default that you are nothing other than being designated being. And therefore, with regards to emptiness, it is a mere negation of an absolute self. As Panchen Lobsang Chögyен has said, sometimes I read these verses, which I have made notes of, in his dialogue between the grasping at true self and the wisdom of selflessness or emptiness. So understanding emptiness is very important for your practice as well. And then it is like the creme of the teaching of the Buddha to shine the in the Tsongkhapa's praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination. He says, I am someone who follows the Buddha, a monk, and I am someone who has not done, who is not poor in learning, and so forth. This verse. So I've become a monk in the teaching, following the teaching of the Buddha. Me too. So I received the novice ordination. So in front of the Lhasa, the Joa statue, I received the novice, the Upasaka novice vows. And so I received the Gelong vow from Ling Rinpoche, my abbot, preceptor. And after I became a Gelong bhikshu, and particularly after I became an exile, though I did study the Perfection of Wisdom texts and others, I particularly studied the Madhyamaka texts by Master Tsongkhapa, the 5 major texts on Madhyamaka, which are the commentaries to Mula Madhyamaka Karika, Madhyamaka Avatara, and then the Lekshe Nyingpo, the essence of eloquence, and then the 2 insight sections of Lamrim Chemo and the middling stage of the stages of the path. And so I have some kind of a hope that I would be able to reach a somewhat simulated experience of the true cessation. And so, regarding the Madhyamaka view of emptiness, first I received teaching on it and understood it On the basis of that, gained some understanding, and then gained understanding through reflection on it, and then familiarized myself with this view of emptiness, even in my dreams. So, of course, I may not be able to reach or have the true experience of a meditative experience of it, the view of emptiness, but I have some experience of it. And so, if you go over this text like this on the view of emptiness, it would be helpful to remind yourself of the view of emptiness. And Jetson Kappa also says that the Four Noble Truths, the Four Noble Truths were taught by the Buddha in all his teachings, from the basic vehicle up to the Madhyama, the greater vehicle teachings. So for the stages of the path to enlightenment, Madhyamaka view becomes very important. It's crucial. So it would be helpful to read Panchen Lobsang Chogyin's dialogue between ignorance and the wisdom of emptiness. So with regard to this text, the recognizing my mother and an experiential view of the Song of the View, I received explanatory transmission from Yongzin, my tutor, Ling Rinpoche, and also Kensur Tempa Tenzing of Debung Monastery. So I will give so you who revealed, bear the wonder of dependent origination, dependent arising nature, O my Guru, your kindness is boundless indeed. Kindly reside in my heart as I utter these spontaneous words from what's flickering through the mind. This lunatic child who lost his old mother long ago is about to realize by chance what he has not recognized. She has been with him all along. And so here the mother refers to the view of emptiness. And so with regard to that, dependent origination becomes the basis of both samsara and nirvana. And so here the old mother is used as an analogy for the emptiness. She is perhaps that is and is not quietly spoken by my brother, dependent arising. So since I am merely designated, therefore it is empty of any intrinsic existence. So when you say this form is empty, it may not give any sense to you, make any sense, but when you are told that the form is dependently arisen, it has some impact on you. As Pelmar Thöpa, so
송진 나선데 아멘 좀바 지지 분주도 아멘 준식
So the diverse subject-object relative from mother's gentle smile, this cycle of birth and death, her deceptive words, my undeceiving mother, you have betrayed me, while I hope to be saved by my mother, by my brother dependent rising. It is ultimately in your kindness alone, O mother, that my hopes for freedom lie. So since things do not exist the way ignorance conceives it to be, therefore there is always hope for us to understand the actual reality of things. If the duality of subject and object is as it seems to be, then not even the Buddhas of the three times can save us. So this duality of subject-object is because of our clinging to the clinging ignorance at true existence. And if things were to exist the way this ignorance clings on to, then the Buddhas of the three times cannot save us, because we cannot reach Buddhahood. But this ever-shifting spectacle is, in truth, my changeless mother's expressions. Hence, there is indeed a way out, freedom. This inexpressible mother of mine, not existing in any form, appears in all forms. So this shows emptiness and dependent origination. In this mutual dependence of emptiness and form alone is an important sense indeed, or lesson. Not finding my father when sought is in fact finding my mother. So the father here refers to the object which you investigate, on which the emptiness of it is established. So not finding my father when sought is in fact finding my mother. My father is found in my mother's lap. So all these diverse things, pure and impure objects, are manifestations of the emptiness, and therefore all actions, agents, and so forth are the manifestation or emanation of this emptiness, and which is says here, in my mother's lap. So that's how these kind parents save their child, I'm told. Evidently, my mother's face, which is neither one nor multiple, appears ungraspably in my mother's brother's mirror, yet a lunatic like me has not the slightest clue. So this is showing humility. And Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti, Nagarjuna's the sixth text of collection, and particularly the Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental treatise of the Middle Way, which is very important, very precious, where it says what is dependently arisen is said to be empty, and that is designated, and that is the middle way. So this is a very powerful statement by Master Nagarjuna. And then amongst his commentaries on the Madhyamaka Avatara, there is the Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara and its auto-commentary, as well as Parisanapada, which are very important. So I read the auto-commentary to Madhyamaka Avatara by Master Chandrakirti, which is very helpful. So, of course, it is very important to do the practice of reliance on the Guru, but this text by Chandrakirti does not say that. And towards the end of Madhyamaka Avatara, Master Chandrakirti says, even if someone may be very learned, but without some imprint from the past, they will not be able to understand this profound emptiness. And so does masters like Vasubandhu and Dignaga and so forth. Have they abandoned this teaching on emptiness, profound emptiness, or not? He asked, and he says, yes, they have. So Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti set their instructions upon the wind, and Manjushri Garba, which is Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa, his writings like the Madhyamaka Avatar commentary and Madhyamaka Avatara's commentary, and then the true essence of true eloquence, and the insight section of great stages of the path, and the insight section of the middling stages of the path. And so Teochepen Rinpoche once used to say that if you study these 5 texts well, then you will not be able to, you will not find yourself overwhelmed by suffering and so forth. So I hope to see my ever-present old mother without the hardship of searching or prolonged search. So when you talk about emptiness, you need to actually be able to find it within yourself, that it's merely. So this shows that this searching for seeking for the understanding of emptiness must be done within yourself. There seem to be some among our own scholars of today caught in the web of words like thoroughly withstanding or true existence. So without touching the conventionally existent thing, and these scholars seem to actually be talking about some object of negation, who seek only to negate some creature with 4 horns, while leaving intact this everyday appearance of solidity. So when you understand that things are merely designated, when you actually understand that well, then and then check how things appear to you, you'll be able to see that they appear as if they have some objective existence. And therefore, this everyday appearance, if things were to exist the way they appear,
As Madhyamaka
Avatar says, that things cannot be found when you analyze and search for their identity and end, whereas we are not able to understand that way of existence of things, that they are merely designated, but we. So verse number 9, verse number 10. So who seek only to negate some creature with horns while leaving intact this everyday appearance of reality, solidity. So, of course, there are philosophical schools which also say that things must have some objective existence in themselves, without which we cannot talk about a cognition, a valid cognition, and its object. But such vivid duality is not found on my mother's unveiled face, I believe. From the protracted discussions missing the point, my old mother is liable to flee. Things of course exist, but not in this way, of stark facts rendered into dichotomies. So, of course, things do exist, but they exist by way of designation. Apart from that, they do not exist, for the inseparable bond of our loving parents is more one of tenderness and joy, and therefore emptiness and dependent origination are of the same the two sides of the coin, as we say. So in the 3 principal articles of the path, Master Tsongkhapa says, appearance dispels the extreme of permanence or existence, and the emptiness that dispels the extreme of nihilism. So, of course, things merely appear. There's mere appearance, and therefore the extreme of existence, eternalism, is dispelled. And therefore, since things are, since they exist not by way of their own true existence, and therefore they lack any true existence, and they do not exist objectively, but they are merely designated, and therefore emptiness does away with the extreme of nihilism. Verse number 10, 11, 12 again. Things, of course, exist, but not in this way of stark facts, rendered into dichotomies. For the inseparable bonds of our loving parents is more one of tenderness and joy. So if, of course, things are empty of inherent existence, then we can say emptiness and dependent origination go together. Whereas if things were to exist the way they appear to us, as if they have some absolute existence, then they cannot go together. Vaibhashikas, Satantrikas, Vajjanavadas, and the three Eastern masters, though they label this mother is limestone like white elephant with names so divergent and so forth. So the Madhyamakas, Savatantrika Madhyamakas are not able to explain or posit dependent origination precisely. So yet they all seem to have lost this old mother. Likewise, many scholars and meditators amid Sakya, Nyingma, Karma, and Dukpa pride themselves on their diverse terminology: reflexive awareness, subject-free, empty and luminous. So I've received teaching on the Lamde, the part in the fruit, of the Sakya tradition, where they talk about Seltong Zinme, which means the luminous, empty, and subject-free. So this reflexive awareness. So the union of clarity and emptiness. So these are not only talking about emptiness as taught in emptiness, the Sutra Yana, but these are also a reference to the clay-light mind, which manifests when we dissolve, go through the dissolution process, and all these three visions are dissolve into this clear light, and so that mind is used to realize emptiness in the tantric teaching, which are taught also in the Sakya, Nyingma, and Kagyu traditions. So primordial purity and spontaneity, Samandabhata's true face, Mahamudra, also the uncontrived innate nature. So these are all reference to the subtlest clear-light mind taught in the highest Yoga Tantra. Neither is nor is not devoid of any standpoint. This is all splendid if the target is hit, but I wonder what you are all pointing at. External matter is not dismantled, so we are Vashikas and Tatrikas. Worry not and be pleased. Though no reflexivity, cognition and cognized are tenable, all Vijnanavadas do be pleased. Intrinsic nature's absence, dependent arising, remains stark. O three Eastern Masters, please be pleased as well. With no conflict, clarity and emptiness can be upheld. Holders of pupil instruction lineage, be not apprehensive. Though pure, primordially, good and bad are feasible, you Vidyadhara yogis need not grasp that purity. Since the innate nature can dawn through even contrived meditation, you elderly meditators need not be persistent or insistent, since one can uphold the absence of elaboration, of existence and non-existence. You stubborn logicians need not fret. This may not all have evolved from not knowing the proper use of conventions by some wanting in erudition. I mean no disrespect to you. Do forgive me if I cause offense. Though I am not among the omniscient brats, I do possess expertise in riding the well-bred horse of my ancestors' works, so I hope to traverse and the challenging passages through constant and dedicated striving. No search is required, for seeker is the sought. Never grasp at the true, for it is false, yet shun not this falsity, for it is the truth. And we can rest in this, that is neither nothing nor absolute. Though I may not see my mother directly, I feel I've just found my kind long-lost parents. Through hearing the mere names, they are as if right here beside me. Great indeed is the kindness of Guru Nagarjuna and his heirs. Great indeed is the kindness of Goswami Thakur. Great indeed is the kindness of my Guru. To repay their kindness, I will honor my mother. Though the joyous celebration of noble deeds, through the noble joyous celebration of noble deeds, through the meeting of the young child awareness with his mother, with his unborn expressed by aging mother, may all mother sentient beings be led of lasting joy. Robert Durkee performed here and that now, a dance of ecstatic joy and worship the three jewels, and then the colophon. So I usually read the dialogue between ignorance or grasping at true existence as with this text. So these are verses from the Benjamin Lawson Chögyin's text that His Holiness is reading. So of course I have made notes of these lines from the text, which is Benjamin Lawson Chögyin's text. So with this we have finished. We're done with the teaching on the recognizing the mother, my mother, an experiential song of the view. So I have received these teachings from Rinpoche, and I do reflect on these teachings regularly.
Question.
And next we'll have question and answer session.
Yeah.
So we have also the ceremony for view. So since it is close to Tibetan New Year, I'm taking this opportunity to give so for everyone who celebrated Tibetan New Year, the Losar, Tibetans, and then the Ladakh and people in Ladakh and the Himalayan regions, and also Mongolians. I wish to greet you all for the new year. So this year is going out and the new year is coming. And so we need to check our minds, and particularly as Buddhists, you need to check what you have done in the past year regarding how you have done your study, reflection, and meditation of the teaching of the Buddha. So if you have done something to the best of your ability, however small it may be, then so you need to pursue your study, continue your study, reflection, and meditation on the texts and teachings by the Buddha, teachings of Master Nagarjuna and his followers, and Master Tsongkhapa and his followers, and so that you'll be able to fulfill the aspirations of these past masters, your own root guru and the lineage masters. And so when you celebrate the new year with Tashi Delek, you need to check how your past year has been, and then when you enter the new year, you need to make a resolution that you will do the things pertaining to the Dharma that will be an offering of your practice to please the Buddha. So Tibetans inside Tibet, so I sometimes see online through televisions, or so everyone in Tibet has this devotion to Avalokiteshvara. So they have a very strong faith in me, and this, of course, gives them peace of mind. And that makes the people relaxed and also good, warm-hearted. So I wish to greet Tibetans inside Tibet with Tashi Delek for the new year, and together with this, I wish to say that Tibetan writing, which was devised during the time of Songtsen Gampo, King Songtsen Gampo, and then Tesong Detsen, and so forth. So Tibetans in general, and particularly those inside Tibet, for you, I wish to say that Buddhism that we have is something unique among the followers of the teaching of the Buddha. This Nalanda tradition that we have, which is the impeccable Nalanda tradition. So this also holds the Tibetan culture. And so in order to study this, you need to have the language. And therefore, the Tibetan language itself also gains respect. So today, not only the traditional Buddhists, but even amongst the scientists, we have people who admire and respect this teaching of the Buddha that we have preserved for over 1,000 years. So you and those of you who are in Tibet, you need to preserve it, and we here in exile also do that. And so in order to do that, in order to preserve our language, culture, and religion, Right from the beginning since we came into exile, we emphasized teaching our language and culture to our younger generation in schools. And then we also included the teaching of Buddhist logic primer, and the study of mind and logic, reasoning. And then we also have re-established the monastic institutions where we have the students studying this Nalanda tradition, and we have produced thousands of geishas so far. So we are doing what we can in exile to preserve and promote our own cultural tradition, and those of you inside Tibet should also have the same aspiration to preserve our own culture and religion. And if that is done by the Tibetans themselves, then we have Chinese from the mainland China also taking interest in Buddhism. With the number of these people taking interest in Buddhism is increasing, and particularly professors of universities in China who have access to publications, our publications from exile community, they especially admire this tradition of Buddhism that we have, and saying that the Tibetan Buddhist tradition is a pure Nalanda tradition, and it is also scientific. And so since Chinese Buddhists number of Chinese Buddhists are increasing, of course, politically, we are under the rule of the Chinese government. But religion-wise, we may have the opportunity to spread the teaching that we have of Buddhism to the Chinese people as well. And so this is what I wish to express to you for the new year. And now, with regards to the Bodhicitta ceremony, so as Shantideva says, if you do not exchange your joy and happiness with the suffering of others, live alone, reaching Buddhahood, even in samsara, you will not have happiness. And then he also says, which intelligent person would feel discouraged to ride the horse of bodhicitta, which leads you out of despair from bliss to bliss. And so bodhicitta is this factor which brings all kinds of good things to you. And so if you think more about others rather than being selfish, you will be happy, truly happy. Whereas if you remain selfish, you will not be happy. Even if you wish to have happiness, it will not happen, as Shantideva himself says in this verse. Even in samsara, you will not have happiness. So bodhicitta is something incredible. So even if someone may not be religious, but if they are warm-hearted, they think of helping others, of course they will have happiness. So if you remain selfish, on the other hand, you will always be suspicious of others. You will have fear, anxiety, and so forth. And people around you will not have happiness. And if you remain altruistic, you will be peaceful, and people around you also will be happy. And even the atmosphere around you will be something appealing. So all these problems in the world have their source in this selfish attitude, on thinking only of oneself. So we'll go through the
고르기 책이 뭐예요? 고르기 어디 책? 저다데 알아서 삼을로기 늘려야 때배다부터 뭐 샤게도 뭐나를 삼버체. 그래서 아니 대야도 또 뭐겐기 라마디.
So imagine the Buddha, the founder of the teaching, in front of you in the space, and think of me as the messenger between you and the Buddha. So the Buddha, whose qualities of wisdom, compassion, and power are incredible, first generated bodhicitta and then went through the accumulation of merit and wisdom over 3 countless eons, and then finally became fully enlightened. And this enlightenment came about particularly through the practice of compassion. So from my side, for you, this will be my gift for you for the New Year, Tibetan New Year. So the Buddha, with great compassion and courage, he generated bodhicitta and then went through the accumulation of merit and wisdom and finally became enlightened. So of course there are many other religions in the world, but the teaching of the Buddha is something, the depth of which you will be able to fathom if you through logic and reasoning. You'll see the teaching of the Buddha more and more profound. And so the Buddha is someone who is incomparable teacher. So if you wish to follow the teaching of the Buddha himself, you need to actually, if you wish to follow him, you need to follow his teaching through understanding it. Otherwise, it will not make any sense to follow the Buddha without taking interest in his teaching. So, visualize the Buddha in front of you and consider me as your messenger between you and the Buddha. And then also around the Buddha, imagine Maitreya and other close Bodhisattva disciples of the Buddha, and then Master Nagarjuna and Asanga. So, in other words, the lineage masters of the stages of the path to enlightenment, the extensive and the profound lineages. And also, imagine all sentient beings around you. Sentient beings who are as limitless as the space and have this determination to become enlightened, to reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So with this in mind, please repeat these lines. So I seek refuge in the 3 jewels and so forth. And in this text, we have, in order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. And so there's no greater thing than bodhicitta. to fulfill the goals of oneself as well as helping others. And Bodhisattva will bring both the temporary as well as the lasting goals of happiness and fulfillment. Therefore, in order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. So all these sentient beings, even those who you may consider as being sworn enemies, should be invited as your guests for the feasts of enlightenment and the practices of Bodhisattvas. So none can be expelled as being even enemy of the teaching. And so all sentient beings, because everyone wants happiness and not suffering, but because of their ignorance, though beings are same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, yet out of ignorance they cause suffering to others. So having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact their delightful, supreme enlightened effect practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So we'll go through these. So because of this ceremony of Bodhisattva that I'm giving, I also put on my robes, Chogu and Namjar. And so imagine or visualize the Buddha and surrounded by this the 8 close disciples, and then also the 17 Nalanda masters. And so make this determination that you will aspire to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, come what may. So in order to engage in the Bodhisattva, all practices of Bodhisattvas, you are taking this Bodhisattva. So of course, if you take the Bodhisattva vow, you need to observe the 18 downfalls and also the 46 secondary infractions. Please, repeat this. I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing individually. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme, and enlightened practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So this is the first. Please. So whip up your courage or determination further when you repeat these lines. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme, and so forth. So just as the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas have gone through the practice, I will also follow suit. I seek refuge in the rituals. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart my state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I'm not the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the life of supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Please. So we have done for the second time this repetition. And so at the third repetition, when you say, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, take all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in front of you as your witness, and the sentient beings for whom you determine yourself to work for their benefit. So having called all sentient beings as your guests for happiness, you make your pledge to do everything for their benefit. I seek refuge in the rituals. I confess all misdeeds. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart Buddha's enlightenment. I go for refuge under them enlightened, the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I should develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Today my life has borne fruit. So as Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, so because the Tibetan Losar New Year is approaching, this is my gift for you for the Losar, the New Year. So particularly for those inside Tibet whose spirit is undaunted, so though I live in India physically and I've not been able to remain in Tibet, but with regard to helping other human beings, I've been able to do more living in exile than being in Tibet. So you should feel at ease thinking that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is able to serve humanity well, living in exile. So next, let's go do the question and answer session.
Question now.
Please start your questions.
Your Holiness, on behalf of the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition, I would like to offer our deepest gratitude for giving this precious teaching at the request of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. We now have some questions from the members of the FPMT organization from around the world. First up, we have Venerable Katzen from Queensland in Australia.
Today, Your Holiness, may you live a long and healthy life and continue to care for us with your great compassionate wisdom. My question is, the Madhyamaka view is taught to us using the writings of Nagarjuna, Chandakirti, Tsongkhapa, and more. They present assertions and refutations which are based on different Indian philosophies, both Buddhist and non-Buddhist schools of thought. Buddhism now taught in other societies which have different cultural and religious dispositions and are widely affected by theistic Abrahamic religions which believe in a creator God. Many people believe in the existence of a soul. The Indian tradition does not directly address these belief systems. For example, the soul, as asserted in the West, is similar, but also slightly different to the assertions of self, which are asserted and refuted by the Indian texts. Does Your Holiness think that there is a need and a way to adapt the way the Madhyamaka view is now taught outside of the Tibetan tradition to reflect these dispositions and make the teachings more current in these new places? Thank you and Happy New Year, His Holiness.
Oh, yeah.
So, as one of my commitments is for peace in the world, to bring peace in the world, and for every human being to have happiness and be at ease. And then second commitment is religious harmony. So those of the theistic religious followers Of course, philosophically, they may have different concepts, but the main message they also have is to help others, other human beings. And the theistic religions also, they say that we are all creation of the same God, and that God is the God full of love. And therefore, they also give the message that all of us also must be in harmony with each other. So, of course, within Buddhism also we have different philosophical tenets. And within Madhyamakas and Chittamatras as well, we have subdivisions of these schools. So, according to the mental dispositions of the different beings, we have different philosophical concepts as well. But the message all these traditions have is not to harm others, but help others. So most of these religions have the same message. So soul is related to the philosophical idea. So I don't consider it very important, as it was already said in the Recognizing My Mother. So despite these differences, everyone is taught to have a good heart. So when you emphasize the main message that we practice, it doesn't really matter much. Whereas philosophically, of course, there are differences.
Next.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Our next question comes from Venerable Tenzin Sultrim in Singapore.
Your Holiness, Dashi Dele, and Happy New Year to you. My question is, what is the best thing to say or do to help someone who is very sick and dying, including those who are non-Buddhists? Thank you so much, and please live long, Your Holiness.
So whether people are Buddhist or not, or religious or not, without making any distinction, if someone is dying, has a terminal death, sickness or illness, it is important for them to have a peaceful state of mind as they approach death. So the doctors and nurses and other people related to them who take care of them, they should try to keep the person peaceful. Of course, if the person dying does have a belief in a religion, then of course they need to be reminded of their belief, God or whatever. Whereas even if they may not be religious, they should be made to feel at ease. So if someone is thinking, of course, believe in reincarnation, rebirth, of course, then we should do accordingly to help this person. Whereas if someone does not have any belief in rebirth, it is important still to keep their minds relaxed and be at ease, peaceful, because if they feel agitated, then it's not good. Especially if you believe in rebirth, such agitated mind will have impact in the next life. So the doctors, mainly the doctors, nurses, are very important. It's very important for them to do their best to keep a peaceful state of mind in the patient. So from my own experience, when I see doctors and nurses smiling at me, I feel at ease. Whereas if the doctors and nurses show some kind of a serious face, then that doesn't give me, that makes me anxious as well. And so it's very important to keep the patient, the sick person dying, very peaceful. Next.
Next, I would like to welcome Dechen Bloom from Vermont in the United States to ask his question.
Thank you to Your Holiness for giving this talk to us, and thank you to Lama Zopa Rinpoche for requesting it. My question for you, on behalf of other young people around the world, is how to best deal with feelings of isolation and loneliness due to the pandemic. Does Your Holiness have advice for how to be more happy and content without as many social interactions?
So, of course, it is true, due to this pandemic, people are not able to gather in big groups. So this has to do with our own health, taking care of our health. So the children, of course, sometimes you may be able to gather together to play some sports like football or something. But if you are alone, it would be good to read books. Of course, because of this, usually you may be playing with others, other children, and get distracted. Whereas if you, because of this pandemic, thanks to this pandemic, you also have the opportunity to stay focused, reading books, staying alone, and religious practitioners, they do sit alone in their own hermitage doing their practices. So this pandemic has given us an opportunity to stay by yourself, to read books or listening to teachings and so forth that are available on the online. And so if you could do that, it would be good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now next.
Up next, we have Venerable Tenzin Namjong from Sarah J in India.
Thank you, Your Holiness. In some Dzogchen texts, we see explanations of Buddhahood without meditation, and some explanations of Buddha nature being described as sentient beings as already being enlightened, but just not knowing it. How do we rectify these views of a sort of instant enlightenment with a more traditional presentation of Lama Tsongkhapa, that enlightenment comes through a lot of effort, through a gradual path to enlightenment, and especially that the realization of emptiness needs a lot of effort into identifying the object of negation?
So
as I already said before, in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen, it is not only meditating on emptiness of objects outside objects, but it is the main focus is meditating on the emptiness of your own mind. So in the Dzogchen tradition, they talk about the Rigpa, the pristine awareness, maintaining that awareness without being tinged or affected by our grasping. So in the case of this clear or luminous nature of the mind that is taught in the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, even in the Sutrayana, but it's precisely taught in the highest Yoga Tantra. So after the states of mind, which are the three visions of whitish appearance and so forth, and also the 80 different conceptions, these must dissolve. And you go through the dissolution of the three visions, the whitish appearance dissolving into the reddish increase, and then the blackish near attainment, and then finally you have the clear light mind. So in the Dzogchen or Mahamudra or the union of clarity and emptiness, they emphasize the meditating on emptiness of the mind with that, the subtlest clear light mind. So the mind, the adventitious thoughts are not given any work, but maintaining that clear light mind. Of course, the Buddhahood without meditation may have to do with such meditation using this clear light mind. It's not, they are not talking about becoming Buddha, becoming a Buddha without doing anything. So as it is said in the Recognizing My Mother, the union of clarity and emptiness, or clarity, or the Riktong Sungjuk, the awareness and emptiness, have to do with this. So in the Dzogchen tradition, the practitioners maintain this Rigpa, this pristine awareness, without being distracted by any other states of mind. So, and the second part of the question, which talks about the all sentient beings being enlightened from the beginning, right from the beginning, does not mean that literally, but what this refers to is the Tathagata Garbha that we talk about, which is the potential for enlightenment that we have. So there's no contradiction here between the earlier and Jetwangkapa's view. So in Jetwangkapa's Rimnga Setun, the elimination of the 5 stages, he mentions that after the dissolution of the 3 visions of whitish appearance and so forth, then you actually come down to that clear light mind. So through your meditation, so all the different discursive thoughts are withdrawn, and together with these 80 conceptions, their wind energies also are dissolved. And so due to that, all the conceptions also dissolve. So this is same in all the traditions, Satyanyingma Gelu Kagyu. So of course, before doing that, when we present the emptiness and the nature of the mind being clarity and luminous and so forth, these are, of course, we need to develop the experience of them as well. So in Jetsamila Rinpoche's case, of course, he was doing his meditation. In his songs, so when he was bitten by a dog, and then Jim Miller Repa says that from the vantage point of the ultimate truth, even the Buddha does not exist. Not to talk about the obstacles. So Rinpoche emphasized on study of the classical texts. So of course, when you do meditation, without much learning, you need to have a fully qualified Lama who leads you through the meditation. Otherwise, just receiving some instruction and doing your practice, you may fall into the pitfalls. So Master Tsongkhapa has emphasized the teachings as taught by Master Nagarjuna and others.
Your Holiness, the next question comes from Jackie Yip in London, England.
Dalai, Your Holiness, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you for giving this Bodhisattva vow renewal right before Losar. Also, thank you to Lama Zopa Rinpoche for requesting these teachings. My question, Your Holiness, please, Your Holiness, tell us how we can get a feel of the false sense of self when it shows up in my mind of who I am and in my experiences. And how do we deconstruct that when we catch ourselves creating that false sense of self? Thank you very much, Your Holiness.
So as Master Nagarjuna says, not the aggregates, not things from it. It's not based on them, and they're not based on it. And the Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. What is the Tathagata? What else is the Tathagata? So you can use that with reference to yourself. I'm neither the aggregate, nor different from it, and so forth. Who am I in the end? So usually we do have a sense of self, thinking of me, my body, my speech. If you ask whose voice is that, you'll say it's mine. But without doing any ultimate analysis into this, when you will think my speech, my body, and so forth do exist. But when you ask, where is that I? So, of course, that I or yourself exists through appearance, through this mere appearance. But You do not exist the way you appear to your mind, as if it has some kind of an absolute objective existence. So Master Chandrakirti also says that if you try to search for your identity of a self through the sevenfold in the seven terms, as analyzing a chariot, you will not find anything as being yourself. So, when you study Madhyamaka philosophy, we say that things do not exist intrinsically. That doesn't mean things don't exist at all, but that means things don't exist the way they appear to us, as if they have some kind of a solid inherent existence. Next question, please.
So our next question and the following one are the last two. The next question is number 6. It's Sam Go from Portland in the United States.
Tashi Dilek, Your Holiness, thank you for being such an inspiration for all of us. Please continue to teach and live long. My question is, as politics becomes more and more polarized across the world, does Your Holiness have an advice for how to engage compassionately with people who are aggressively oppositional? Whether we pick a side or not, there are many people around us who disagree, sometimes with violent intent. As practitioners aspiring to bodhicitta, are there ways to engage with such people in a compassionate and beneficial way?
So usually people have a very strong sense of division, me and versus, they versus me versus others. So of course, as children, we played together. We have not bothered about what race or nationality and so forth of the other children. We played together, but once we start our school age and going to school, even though you may be in the same you may be of the same nationality, but then there is also division on the basis of your social background, rich and poor, and so forth. And so these differences are emphasized in this school educational systems. And then when we are given education, there is some sense of a patriotism being taught, talking about my nation, our nation, and which is very narrow-minded. The children are not taught about the wider world, thinking of others in terms of us being the whole world. So they are more narrowly focused on us as a nation rather than the world at large. So we are living on this earth, 7 billion people on this earth, whether you are Europeans or Africans or Latin American or Asian, and within Asia, India or China or Himalayan region, people of Tibet and so forth. So if you think of the whole of Asia or Europe or so forth and so forth, we all want happiness and do not want suffering. So when you think about economy today, there is no boundary, national boundary as such. And then climate also does not make any distinction between this group of people or not. So we cannot talk about the benefit of my or our people. You need to think about the global community. So when you think about this in this way, you will not think of using violence. So we know that from our common sense that war is not a solution to our problems. Just as we have already experienced the First and Second World Wars. So during those times, people have emphasized making nuclear atom bombs and so forth. But after the two wars, this obsession was not there. And then regarding the European Union, after the Second World War, mainly France and Japan, Germany, took the initiative to create a European Union by taking lessons from the Second World War. So they recognize the commonality between the European nations, and therefore came up with this idea of European Union and set it up. And so if you think from a wider perspective, you should think of bringing happiness or benefit to the whole world, and we, in reality also, from the point of reality of today's reality, we should not think of a regionalism, but think of the whole world. So, of course, there will be change.
Next will be our last question for today, and it is from Venerable Tenzin Drolma in Dharamsala, India.
Good morning, Your Holiness. I wanted to ask, is the realization of subtle impermanence sufficient for realizing emptiness? How does the realization of emptiness remove the ignorance more thoroughly? Thank you, Your Holiness.
So with regard to subtle impermanence, so of course things change moment by moment. And you also use this understanding of the subtle impermanence to counter your sense of permanent self. Of course, this is not sufficient for realizing emptiness. The Shravakas and Vatyeka Buddhas do realize this impermanence, the subtle impermanence, but they have not been able to get rid of all the defilements. So with regard to emptiness, you need to think, just as there are degrees of subtlety within the self-grasping, likewise there is degrees of subtlety in selflessness. For example, the selflessness is established or demonstrated or taught by Master Asanga and his followers, has to do with the rejection of externality of things, and then meditating on the non-duality of subject and object. This is done in order to reduce our attachment to objects outside, external objects. And even in quantum physics, they do talk about there being no objective existence. So the non-duality of subject and object is taught to counter our attachments to external objects. As I already quoted Master Chandrakirti before, this Chittamatra view, where they say there's no externality of things, but the mind itself, when you apply that to mind itself, it doesn't counter that attachment to the mind. So without making distinction between what is external or internal, everything, internal and external, when it is said that they are without any intrinsic existence, then you are actually thinking of emptiness of everything there is, without making it a narrow idea. So if you are able to think that things, external or internal, whatever they may be, have no intrinsic, inherent existence. So as I quoted Madhyamaka Avatara, as I said, the auto commentary mentions that Master Vasubandhu and Dignaka and so forth have actually rejected the profound emptiness taught by Master Nagarjuna. So you need to think about the different degrees of subtlety of the selflessness in relation to the grasping at self.
Your Holiness, thank you so much. I would like to now welcome Lama Zopa Rinpoche back to give his conclusion and dedications for the teachings today. Thank you.
This is a mandala offering. This wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, the incomparable, kind, supreme Tianjin Gyatso, may your life be long and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. That in this world, Buddhism is considered by scientists and scholars to be so precious and valuable, and that each year Tibetans are held in good regard by more and more people as human beings who are in sincere in nature with good thoughts and to benefit others. Is totally and solely due to your kindness, precious refuge, Savior. But I'm an ignorant one. I have explained this. If there are people who can't accept it, then the seventh Dalai Lama Gesang Gyatso says, in view of the mind stirred up by delusions in spirits and spirit possessions, even though we feel it's right, it is like the dancing act of a crazy one. However, many multitude of vices look down upon by the holy beings have been done. From the depths of my heart, confess them individually with fervent So, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we have known each other. We are trusted friends. And your teacher, Lama Thupten Ishi, and you have founded many Dharma centers in order to help, to the best of your ability, many people. So I really appreciate your work. So while Lama Thupten Ishi was alive, both of you did well. And after Lama Thupten Ishi passed away, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you have also been doing your best. I would like to thank you, and please continue to do your best. Feel determined to continue your efforts, and thank you. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche has, of course, done your service to the Dharma in general, and the specific traditions. Whatever you have done cannot be obliterated. So you are giving advice to people, whether they are believers or not. What you do to help others is very good. So thank you, and Tashi Delek.